They should have said the poet. The poet. They should have said the poet. The poet.
This is Sending Poets, a podcast about ideas. Our goal is to understand metaphorical truths within the beauty we find in the human experience. Sending Poets.
The notebook evolves, quicker in some areas and still room to grow. My name is John. With me is Bob. Hello, Bob.
Hello, John.
And this is the fourth iteration, I guess, right, of the NotebookLM conversation generation AI
Over
wonderment. Yeah.
It's like a podcast simulation overview kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there was a release of an updated feature, was there not? I don't think we played around with it on this one, but
Yeah, not on this one, but yeah, it'll be really interesting to, yeah, it's just a customized. So like if you listen to the last few episodes, NotebookLM has, this feature to generate a conversation based on whatever data sources you have fed to it, which can be just written words, it can be websites, it could be YouTube links. And in this iteration, we added the final Callin episode. So this now, the data sources that NotebookLM has are all of the written Pumpkinhead stuff and all of the previously recorded conversations that Bob and I had. And again, just click this button, generate this conversation. In future, maybe we'll keep doing this or something of this nature. But I think the day that we generated this was when they released this customized feature where you can sort of, lead the conversation or point the conversation in a way that you want it versus how it was, up to now, which again is just click the button and that's it, and it just goes. So that's cool.
We might want to mention that we did regenerate based off a singular data set once.
Right.
And it did give us vastly different results, which I thought was
right.
Fairly not just interesting, but probably useful.
Yeah.
In that, you're really getting it's formulaic, but it's also unique each time. So, gotta add those two things together, right? It's formulaic but unique. I don't know. It seemed like something for us to explore would be to maybe generate, for testing purposes, multiple iterations at some point and seeing what differences there are or try adding or removing some data sets.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe what would the conversation be like if we removed all the written stuff and it was only based on the Callin archive episodes, it is really fascinating. And in this one, some things of note, this was the first time the female host started. I think every other conversation, it's been like the male host going like, okay, so we're diving into blah, blah, blah. And this time the female host started. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought she was also more like the lead.
Yeah, right. And again, not that we prompted it that way, that's just how it came out. But I think with this customization feature, I think you probably could say, generate the conversation, but make sure the female host leads it. I'm sure you can, I assume, I could be wrong, but it seems like that's part of the reason for adding this customizable feature is being able to like direct it very specifically like that. So that's super cool. Another thing that Well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you would think with AI, you'd want everything with a prompt.
Right.
Maybe this first part, because it is so, new or up. I don't know. I just feel like they, having the one button where you just generate, and then it just creates this thing without any parameters. It was very cool, but it is not really useful, right? It's just kind of a parlor trick. But being able to guide the conversation with a prompt, uh, it's going to be phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be next level.
I would assume, just based on my experience with agile development and the software engineering world, that that was part of the plan all along. This idea about minimum viable product. What's something that we can put out now that can be used, that people can use, knowing that it's not the final thing, but it's like something we could do and release. A single button that generates a conversation. Cool, right on. And then the next thing is going to be this customize, as opposed to waiting to have the customizable,
Totally.
feature all worked out to release all at once. It's
No, I think that's I love that way of rolling that out. I
yeah,
mean, it's like you're hard coding one prompt of like,
yeah,
I'm presuming, right? Like make a
yeah, right. Kind of presumptions here, but
make an overarching. What do they always say? They would kind of introduce it. You picked up on this a couple of times, like
well, yeah, especially with the second time they started using the word deep dive. This deep dive is about this. We're going into this deep dive, and yeah, they would talk about it in that context.
I would bet money that someone hard coded the first level of prompts, and this has always had the ability to take prompts, but they wanted to,
yeah,
lock it down or figure out all the bugs first. Because
exactly, yeah,
I mean,
learn, iterate, curate,
yeah, totally. But we're getting to the area of, trying to think of a good analogy. It'd be like making, obviously, perfectly disguised, fake dollar bills or something, right? Like you could, like being able to make humans have a life, not just the sound of the voice, but like lifelike conversations.
yeah,
You probably got to test. It's just like making a lifelike picture or a movie, and you get deep fakes and all the rest. I mean,
yeah,
it's gonna start to take on, once it's released into the wild. It's gonna start to take on its own little life here. And if I were Google or any of these producers, I would probably be sweating bullets every time I put a new feature in.
yeah, yeah, and it's happening fast. It's not like, I mean, do you remember when you first heard about NotebookLM? I think it was like within 2 months ago,
Yes.
and they've already got this like, you know, kind of game-changing feature that they've added with being able to customize this stuff within a couple months or whatever. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
But I still think there's still like definitely like room, like I said, in the haiku, like there's still room to grow. I think where it really shines is in some of the descriptive stuff. The one or two lines will be spoken by these like robots that just like drop my jaw. It's like how could it come up with that? It's really impressive. And then there's other times where like it's just kind of lacking in the overall connecting things together, trying to make sense of all of it in some cohesive sense. There's still, I think, definitely room for growth. But again, like iterating through here, this is the fourth one of these conversations, and each time we've added something, and it's very fascinating to recognize what's changes iteration to iteration. So like in this one, pretty consistently, I think they shifted to talking about the creator singular. Previous ones, they'd be like the creators, the writers. Remember there was one episode where they were saying your notes. It's like, were they talking to each other? Are they talking to us? So this time it was pretty consistently like the creator, of this story. So that was interesting. Also, I know I mentioned this in the very first one. They were consistently saying BBQ, and it made me wonder, like, do they know what BBQ is? But this time they said barbecue, neighborhood barbecue, like a handful of times, and it occurred to me like, well, we probably in these Callin episodes, we were probably saying, barbecue. So it's hard to like know for sure, but at least here's our
Well,
observation.
true.
Without the spoken thing, they were just like BBQ. Add spoken thing, oh, barbecue.
I agree. I agree. But there's two things. There's that plus, however many weeks of time between the first generation and the, whatever iteration that was. I feel like it's changing on its own, meaning the capabilities of the Notebook LM, I think, are probably also, scaling in this time frame. Going back to the releasing of the new features where you can now prompt it to talk about, or focus on something in the talk that's more specifically defined. Anyway, I think it's probably both. And we can test it in that we can deselect some data sources and see how the finished product is. If they go back to saying BBQ, BBQ, that would be an interesting test.
Totally.
But one of the flip sides of that is, like we said earlier as well, it's formulaic but original each time. So you can't really compare truly apples to apples, because you would think if it was just like a straight formula, every time you hit generate, it would come up with the same answer, right? Why, with the same data set, obviously, if you presume the data has not changed, but it doesn't. And that's what's so interesting, I feel, is that it can go off on its own new little tangent each time. And let me call directly to this episode where they brought up some more descriptive ways of talking about the mechanism of infection, and brought up the WASP knife, in a certain kind of way that I felt was, one of the closer ones to understanding what's happening with, it's not injecting venom kind of a thing.
Right. Like, yeah, exactly. This time they understood the point of the WASP, which again, like, I think we probably talked through that in that third episode of the Callin thing. So the new data included us talking about how the WASP knife, I know we talked about that last time too, like, will it, we were curious what would happen, and like I would call this like a success in that it did seem to learn, like, okay, this WASP thing. Now, it was super interesting though, again, in the very first time, I think the female host said something like WASP P, the WASP P knife. And then this time they said WASP knife initially, but towards the end of that conversation, both of the hosts said WASP P knife.
Yeah.
So, the inconsistency is still there. Again, I think that's where there's still room to grow, room for improvement in
we've
continuity.
I think we've got opportunity here to test, and we've talked about this. Like, one of the tests I think we should do, and we've agreed on this, is throughout all this data sets, all the background, it's been generically labeled, each character, by their family member status. Nobody's really had a name yet.
Right.
So one of the concepts of testing is, can we do one data set update, one minimal note, and the note says dad's name is this, mom's name is that, and then just see when we generate next time if that is an overarching update to the data set itself, and like maybe even write in the note, like, make this the first node or something. I don't know. I mean, we got to do it.
That's what, so exactly what I was going to say is, like, A/B testing, I guess, right, is like, just add the data set, generate, see what it sounds like, then customize the conversation, take advantage of that, and especially if it doesn't seem to make the connections. So, use this customize feature to say, like, hey, this new data set, every time that, you see dad in the rest of the source material, dad, mom, popular twin, these are the names. Use these names instead, and then see if it's like able to match all that up. The way that I think we could reasonably expect it to, but with the,
I think it's going to be the prompt. If it's me, I think it's going to be like, we're going to construct this prompt that will have a series of logical instructions or updates or linkages to call upon maybe not. I mean, we're playing around with the voice, generation podcast, but to make Notebook LM generate, written content, being able to guide it and say in the prompt itself, just have a giant prologue to the prompt of whatever it is you're trying to get it to do now.
Yeah.
We'll find all these little updates. Now, here's the thing: there's 3 ways. One way is, put a note in to the content and say, update all the names every time dad comes up, call dad John or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then second would be this, put it in the prompt. But you have to do it every single time. Like you end up with like a, 5,000 word prompt.
Yeah.
Just because you have so many of these, updated notes, things in the prompt that you just copy paste. Third one would be obviously having to pull out every data source other than the verbal, or it's a transcript. I guess we could, I don't know, what I'm saying? Like a transcript off of the podcast.
Yeah.
We did in the past. Like somehow have to do a, find replace on every instance. Every instance of that thing being used to update it. That would be a pain in the butt.
Right. And we wouldn't be able to do that with the audio, like from the YouTube links. I think that would be too so there's definitely some areas, because another area that is interesting to me, but I don't know if it's worth pursuing, is, well, here's the 4th episode of that we're recording talking about this and including it in there. And like, in other words, like if Christopher Nolan was involved in this, maybe he'd be like, yeah, let's like load these conversations into it. So it just like keep feeding itself, the same thing kind of, over and over, Inception style, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
But I think that'll
like
get like too
super meta here. I mean, I already talked to the missus about like how many levels we're in on this thing. So
right.
We're talking. Trying to think, where do we start, the beginning or the end? So we created a podcast about a blog post that we're now using to train an LLM to create a podcast that we then upload into our podcast and do a preface on and talk about.
Yeah, right. And then it's like, actually, this is a complete side care, but it is related. But there's a guy that I've seen on TikTok and Reddit. He like stupid food, crazy food things, and I think his tag is like El Burrito Master. But he's this British dude who will like, it's some of the most creative stuff I've seen. It's not just like here's me cooking something, because he scripts it out where it's like it flows in like this very poetic, but like non-traditional poetic. Like sometimes it rhymes, sometimes it doesn't. But what seems to be his niche is this thing within a thing within a thing within a thing. So like one of the coolest ones was he made a single ravioli, and he makes the dough and everything, and then he puts that ravioli in another ravioli, and then he makes more dough, and this time it's like he uses beets in the dough, so the dough is like red, and he puts the ravioli that's in the ravioli in this new ravioli, and then there's like another ravioli, and he's like, there's my ravioli oli, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. He did one with the burrito. I'm sorry, I know this is like, did you? Yeah, where it's like he makes a burrito just to like slice it and dehydrate it and then turn it in, and then he like blends it together to make like a burrito spice. Yeah. And he uses the burrito spice on some meat to make another burrito that he ends up throwing in a blender with water to make a paste to make a burrito like a tortilla of this burrito seasoning burrito. And then, burritos, and then he makes little chimichanguitos, he calls them, or some shit in there. It's just like mind-blowing shit, dude. So I love it, like this recursive meta thing.
Quick edits, though. He's like all these quick edits, right?
Yeah. It's really well done, right?
Yeah, it probably took like 48 hours to put all that together or whatever.
Totally. For like a minute and a half, 90 seconds worth of something, but it's like, good job, dude.
It's entertaining 90 seconds. Exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, okay. So back to this. So the other thing I was gonna. So yeah, we'll rein ourselves in on like.
Well, I mean, we should test like what is like if we were to put this transcript back in, right? What would come next? I mean, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Like maybe
I think it's fun to think about, and then, but yeah, we'll decide on like what actually,
I mean,
you
all
know,
joking aside, the next step, I think, is because we have tons of notes like that we're going to incorporate into the existing blog post framework, plus release of historical podcasts that we've done before talking about the subject matter. Like the next two things would be additional data sets, and we've talked about this. Like maybe because the dad is a crab fisherman, right?
right,
Maybe put some background on crab fishers, like what
right,
kind of life that is, and et cetera, like for all the characters, and just see what difference the overview generator, podcast generator thing, what would it do if we just put some generic, it didn't have anything to do with the story itself,
right,
not, Pumpkinhead related, just this is what the life is of deadliest
yeah,
catch fisherman, whatever, and see if we can start getting some feedback on that.
right. Really just see like how well it is at connecting these dots that, it's for us might seem obvious. Okay, some source material is talking about the dad being a Bering Sea crab fisherman. Here's a data source about, just like you said, the life of a Bering Sea crab fisherman, and this is what their personalities might be like, or blah blah blah, and see
Totally.
if it picks up on that without needing to be prompted
Exactly.
specifically.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
fascinating things
Because
to
have you
play
noticed?
with.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it. The most fascinating thing to play with is the interplay between what data is in there versus what the outputs are. So I think that's where we just have to muck around in it a little bit. But did you notice? And it might have been in some of the written stuff we've generated as well. But it seems like there are certain characteristics that are very much hammered upon for each character, in these descriptions created by the NotebookLM. Meaning, seems like, there is it's almost one dimensional. Like it's very interesting. I like what they're doing to create these characterizations of the characters themselves. I think it's very clever. But do you understand what I'm saying? Like one dimensional. It just seems like it's very, he is a crab boat fisherman, therefore he has
Yeah,
calloused hands and he works hard and he's gruff.
right. Like
I mean, it's just like very,
yeah. I think at least in two of these so far, tough as nails. They use the term tough as nails. There's almost like cliches or
that's what I'm getting at.
or
Cliche,
stereotypes where it's like,
yeah.
yeah, it's like, okay, cool. Well, that makes sense that maybe recognized again, like connecting dots. But it's like, yeah, knowing it's hard to know like
That's
what.
to me like an outsider's perspective. Like if you're in the
Yeah,
neighborhood, you say, who lives at that house? Oh, that's a crab fisherman and his wife and their family. It's like,
yeah,
okay, you're walking through the neighborhood and like, who lives? Oh, it's a banker and his wife and she's a
yeah,
teacher or whatever. Anyway, like you would just like categorize somebody. It just feels like very
yeah.
high level categorization. Whereas
The difference being like, if you actually knew that family and like, that lived across the street and you could say these are their names and like I've known them for 10 years and like I think that's what you're getting at is it doesn't quite seem like these robots
like the
know
difference,
the characters like that.
yes, but
Yeah.
it's like the difference between watching old scripted shows from like the 70s and 80s and then watching reality TV from like the 90s and the teen or aughts or whatever you want to call it. So like there was this big difference between like you were a caricature, you were a stereotype, you were
Yeah.
a flat one-dimensional kind of presentation of whatever on Leave It to Beaver or
Yeah.
Archie Bunker or whatever the show was, right? Some family ties or whatever, I don't know, whatever the show is, everybody kind of had their role and it was very flat. And then you end up with like reality TV is like everybody's got flaws, first of all, like everybody's flawed,
Yeah.
most of us terribly, and then some people have some moments of exciting heroism or brilliance or something like that. But it just seems like a more realistic shift would be what my prediction is if we add more background content to these specific characters. But testing.
And again, the prompting too. Like it's just going to make it that much better,
Yeah, I mean, will it figure out if we put in a data set relevant to the life and attitudes and environment of teenage identical twin girls,
Right.
Like, will it make that leap and then realize, oh,
Yeah.
when they say the twins, we should draw upon, this data set for, generating dialogue or whatever, and talking about
Right.
pertinent things and whatever. So I think there's a lot of possibility here. It's really about, figuring out what levers do, make what output.
Yeah. Well, speaking of twins, just a couple final things here, but I wanted to ask if you remembered. There's definitely a moment in this episode where the hosts are saying, they're like, "But is the smart twin actually dead?
Yeah,
Like, do they see the body?" And we did talk about that, right? Like, as we were,
we
I
did.
feel like I remember
originally-
specifically saying, like, specifically recognizing that you didn't say, and they saw her body. Like, there's no body yet. And I remember
this
talking about, like, maybe, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, maybe. So they
Well,
picked up on that, I think. So yeah.
I remember this distinctly because in my mind, I never had hope for the smart twin. It was never like a what do you want to call it, a cliffhanger? Literal cliffhanger. It was never like that. But then you brought that up in the first read through, and I thought it's an interesting concept. I'd never intentionally done it that it would be but I don't know. Maybe so, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, like I'm ambivalent at this point. I think the concept, just to talk concept briefly, the concept in my mind was about like an evolutionary race, and there's a sort of get out of jail free card kind of a thing with twins, in that if you're identical twins, evolutionarily speaking, if your twin moves down and continues on and you don't, you still get the same benefits, so to speak. Just like, people would be more in-group preferential to immediate family versus extended family versus non-related outgroup. You see what I'm saying? Like there's and so the concept to me was a little bit playing on the fact that the smart twin in a precarious situation where they've been treed by a pack of pumpkin heads, and either neither of them survive or one of them survives. There's no way that the smart twin figured there was any way for both of them to survive. And her counterpart sibling did not figure this thing out. And that would mean that they would both not survive. So the only option would be then for the smart twin to take the option of self-sacrifice and draw the pumpkinhead mob away so her sister can escape. So that was the whole thing, but then at the cost of her own life. So there you go. I don't know. Does it make sense to allow her to survive then, if the whole point of the scene is that this girl made she did a strategic level analysis of game theory in this moment and realized I could play it out all these different ways. The only one way that gets any of us out of here is if I die, but in the process of drawing these pumpkin heads away, instead of dying later on in the night or whatever when they finally get to us, so she had to do this calculation. And so I don't know, maybe she does survive, and that shows you like there's hope. I don't know. I mean, it could work either way, because at the end it's really down to two people on this island. So kind of semi spoiler alert, this is meant to be a first book of, or first concept of maybe a trilogy level concept. So the end of this story is left open, in that at this point the oldest brother and the popular twin are the last two standing on the entire island, and they're the representatives of their family. And then it will, the story will pick up later on a future iteration of that thing. But anyway, I think it's very interesting how they did pick up on that. But I do think we tipped the hand on that by talking about it.
Sure. Yeah. Which again, like, would be it would be really fascinating, really impressive if we hadn't tipped the hand, like you said, and if it came up with that himself, came up with that themselves, you know.
Well, there's
But
a
I
couple
think,
other ones like the Groundhog Day. Did we ever talk about? I want to say we
yeah,
did find out we did.
and it was in the written thing too. I
Okay.
definitely, it's just like in one
And what was the other one?
parenthetical.
It was also the uh
There
I
was a
don't
reference to trolley problem
yeah, that's right.
in one
Thank
of
you.
the episodes too, but that one I can't remember. I can't remember if we talked about that.
But that is so on the money because that comes
Yeah,
back to this game theory thing where you're like you're dealing with this trolley problem, which is essentially a form
yeah,
of game theory, and that's exactly what's happening. So anyway, it would be like, the concept is to be a hero is you solve the trolley problem by pulling the lever and having the train hit you. So in the trolley problem, usually it's like 5 people versus 1 person. And the trolley's on the track to kill 5, and you have to move it in order to divert it, but then it kills 1.
yeah,
And most people would say the greater good, obviously, would be to kill 1 instead of 5. But then the flip side of that is if you do nothing, you're blameless in all regards. 5 people
yeah,
die, but 5 people die all the time. If you
yeah,
actually put hands on this thing, now you're somewhat culpable, if not completely, to killing this other person. Like you're not
right,
involved in this. So the concept in the book is the hero is the one who then pulls the lever so that you get a third option, which is I'm the one who gets killed, not this innocent person or the innocent 5 people.
yeah,
I'm taking the shot, and that is what we would call, heroic in my
yeah.
my loose definition. So, would it be a cheat then to allow Smart Twin to be a hero and then let her
And survive. Yeah,
and survive? And then especially because we're conceptualizing the next iteration of this would be, at least 4 or 5 generations, if not a couple hundred years in the future. So neither of the living participants of this storyline will be anything but distant memories, so to speak, in the future pickup of the story. So I don't know. Does it make sense to save her, and what does she do?
right. Yeah.
Because I can
No, it's a
understand
good
if the
point.
story
Yeah.
if the story continues and we have a chapter 2 of Pumpkinhead's series 2 or whatever, year 2, then I could see Smart Twin being a participant in future actions and giving her a chance to exemplify an archetype that is, very powerful. But I think it's all things considered best baked in that she is truly sacrificing herself for her sister and for her
Yeah.
family and for her humanity, and paying that ultimate price, that you cannot cheat that thing. And then
Yeah.
lastly, the point being that overarching theme throughout the whole series would be this concept of planting trees under which the shade you'll never sit.
Right.
Like that is the differentiator between a good society and a bad society. This society where everybody eats the trees because you're going to die someday, versus planting trees because you're going to die someday. Like that's the whole thing right there. That's literally the shebang, is to
Yeah.
extract all the goodness, the marrow out of that crazy bone of you're going to die. It's going to happen. You don't accept it yet. But I don't mean you, obviously, John. I mean the big the plural.
Yeah.
You. It's like we don't get, like, even I've been down this road so many times, my head hurts, but I cannot get it yet. The reality of the thing, my brother. The reality of the thing. Like, I will die. I will stop. Like, I will get still. I will get cold. I will get unfeeling forevermore. Like, it's going to happen. And so what terrifies me in my moments now as a middle-aged person is not that I'm going to die anymore. Like, I've accepted that. It's dying badly in that, what if I could have used, some component of this? This is comparing back to the Smart Twin. Like, what if I could have used something to further somebody else's game, some meaningful way, some life-changing way? Because when you look at the end of the show, that first season, and one of the two main things happen. One is the older son essentially chucks grandma down. He makes a decision that she's not going to make it no matter what happens. She's holding me back. I've got to make this choice to get myself further in the game. She's not going to make it no matter what. I got to throw her down, or some variance of that. And then the smart twin gives that gift, the same gift of calculation. Like, I understand we're not both going to make it, but the only one of us who could is going to be you. So it's like mirrored choices here between only one of us will survive, so it's going to be me, and only one of us will survive, so it's going to be you.
Yeah, very interesting, very compelling. Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I love the amount of thought you put into it, and it reminded me that another area of opportunity, I think, and room to grow that this I think we'll witness over time. Maybe they're working on it, maybe it'll happen on its own, but like the it's like the vibe or the emotion so far in all of these generated conversations so far is kind of static. So as you were describing this thing that, just that beauty of thinking about, a person's life and what their purpose is, and coming to terms with like their mortality, and like, is there something I can do to like plant some trees, like do something good. Like, can you imagine one day if the hosts just get so deep into it that like it sounds like they start tearing up and crying? Like, that would be really impressive. And I think it's nothing like that so far. I mean, maybe there's some laughter. I think there is some laughter here and there, but it's definitely the emotional range, I would say, is kind of limited right now. Would you agree?
I would agree. I would agree. It's great strides forward compared to anything previous that I've experienced.
Yeah.
And meaning not in the written word, but in the spoken word. This very specific arena of spoken word is so human, and podcasts have taken off, and
right.
books on tape have taken off. So this genre is like you're not going to fake us out easily. It's like, watching 1,000 hours of your favorite guitarist play guitar, and then they try to fake you.
Yeah.
By putting someone, what?
Yeah.
Dimebag did a little different. Okay. I know he did a little different, and you can't fake me out so easy. So I'm thinking we're going to pick up on many minutia, but I will call it now. It will become unmistakably human. The reason why I bring this up is how we have to guard ourselves against the simulation of humanity, meaning the illusion of understanding, because it's going to become, in my opinion, in just a couple of years, unmistakable from what we're doing right now, down to the pauses, the meaningful sighs, and the sounding choked up. Like, all of this is in data somewhere. Just the sound of the things. Like, it's just the sound is broken into a mathematical equation of what the sound represents in quantitative means, right? Like, you could just break this down into frequencies and amplitudes.
Exactly.
Because it's literally down to like a pixel related level of a picture, right? So the AI is building a picture of a kid with an ice cream cone on a summer day, and she's got a bow in her hair, and there's a swing set behind her. Photorealistic.
Right. Yeah.
How? Well, math, right? It's just
pixels,
right? And the pixels are represented by a number, and the number is represented by this formula and all these weights and yada yada yada. So my point is, it's coming, brother. Like, how good we can get as human beings will be simulatable within 5 years, I believe. Now,
I think so. Yeah.
The point of bringing all this up, though, is kind of what we're doing. The point of what we're doing, which is to have the idea. I don't think the computer will get the ideas that we have.
Right.
Once it takes an idea that you produced and it wants to digest it and interpret it and critique it compared to the full library of the internet and all of the sources of data it has been trained upon for, moving forward, it'll get better every time, obviously, all these things. My point is, I don't care how far down it goes, digesting these data points. I have yet to see anything that is truly emergently, originally created.
It's like in the way you described before, like how ideas aren't like, well, I'm not going to do a good job here because but you've said like ideas aren't like apples. Like if I have two apples and I give you an apple, well now I only have one apple. But if I have two ideas and I give you an idea, I still have two ideas. And I think what I'm hearing is you're saying is like the day that the AI is like, here's an idea I'm giving you. Maybe that won't be in our lifetime. Maybe one day, or maybe it won't ever. Maybe like at best it'll only be able to like take the ideas and churn them around, but to actually create a unique, original idea on its own that it can give us, yeah, maybe that
I
just won't ever
well,
happen, you know?
well, I agree. I think the way you stated it was 100% correct. I will put it in a slightly different form in that what the AI is representative of is abstraction. And what I'm saying humans are representative of is the actual thing. Meaning, if the AI is creating a map, it's going to be able to create a map just like we create a map. It's going to be superior, in fact, at some point in creating maps, but it will never go see the territory. It's incapable of going to see the territory. It doesn't literally understand what it feels like to be out in the woods. So the map is an abstraction of being in the woods. It will never get to the point of understanding what it's like to be out in the woods, being lost, being hungry, being hot, mosquitoes sucking your blood, broken fingers, twisted toes, sprained ankles.
Like it won't understand the human experience of that, right?
It will
You know,
never.
like maybe it'll have its own experience, but like yeah, I don't think it'll you know, it's just because at the fundamental level it's like maybe saying, you know, would you expect a bird to have the experience of a squirrel? Like they're different species, you know, they can experience the same thing
What
in
I'm saying
nature.
is, what I'm saying is, if the squirrel and the bird both were confined to written word only. So the written word is an abstraction of what it's like to be a bird or what it's like to be a squirrel. Now the bird can't know what it's like to be a squirrel. Squirrel can't know what it's like to be a bird. It's just not possible. But through an abstraction level of language, there can be an interpretation of these things. And I'm saying
Yeah.
that the computer works at the interpretive level, but it does not have capability, as far as I can see, to become what we are, which is we, by we I mean the conscious we, meaning our consciousness, where we're interpreting what it feels like and what we see and what we hear subconsciously created. We are the observer component. I'm saying the AI is working as a creative side, a subconscious side for the humans to observe, but it's not going out and having its own experiences. It's all interpreting our experiences back to ourselves.
Yeah.
So if one day it could do, like if the bird could go into the hole in the ground and act like a ground squirrel or whatever, it probably have some kind of an idea what it's like to be a ground squirrel. I mean, not totally, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think the computer is the current architecture of the way it's set up doesn't have what I feel is needed, which is these two components. The one component being the side that's creating these experiences, but doing so unconsciously, and then the conscious side, which is observant of the outputs. And then it's not able to make a creation, or it's very limited, but it can experience what happens next and judge it. And so that's kind of like this back and forth thing between the AI is creative, we're judging it, but it's really only creative based on our previous creativity. And
Yeah.
so jumping to that level of it being creative on its own, I don't know. I think it's fun to play around with that idea, though. Like that would be true artificial intelligence would be, you know, the creative side of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well, let's wrap this up. I wanted to include a couple quotes that I pulled out that I thought were impressive and interesting. It is interesting that I kind of got the sense like that it was trying to wrap up its own, you know, conversation of all of this. Like, I don't know if it has any way to, I don't know if it would be like anticipating that we're going to keep generating the conversation, but there was a sort of conclusion vibe that I was getting from it, because it started to say towards the end, I think both of them were back and forth, and they said these three things. They were talking about the story itself, the pumpkin story. One of them says, it deserves to be out there. It's a story that needs to be told. And then they even said, maybe someone out there is already working on it. This was interesting. Like, they know, they know there's a creator, but like they kind of were, talking about it in a unique way now, which was interesting, I thought.
Agreed. Did we say that at the end of the? I was wondering if they picked up on some of our conversation at the conclusion.
Good. I didn't think about that, but you might be right. Maybe that was just sort of regurgitated what we had said. That's interesting. Yeah. But yeah. So it was cool that I just thought that was interesting and unique for this iteration too. And then the last thing it said. So yeah, like, I think we can wrap up here. Otherwise, we could just keep talking forever about it. But again, like it's formulaic, like it closes with a sort of tagline-ish type of thing. And this time it said, in the meantime, keep those lights on and those wasp knives handy.
I love how they have an outro. I mean, they have like a outro. They always try to sum it up. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I will just the last little bit, and then let the audience listen to the actual recording. But the last little bit is, I thought this was one of my least favorites, quite honestly.
Interesting.
I thought it felt a little bit overmixed. Like, it felt like it was a little bit squishy, or little brown like all the paint colors mixed together makes it a little bit brown. So it makes me think there might be something to, and obviously this is fully subjective. This is just, personal taste or whatever, but I wonder if there is some kind of a diminishing return.
Yeah, so exactly what I was gonna, diminishing return thing.
Because I feel like it was more like it was a little bit more, there was more stuff happening, but it felt less, like it felt more, whatever it was, the few topics they talked about, like over 10 minutes, they would talk about, say, 4 topics of the story. The 4 would be very pure and almost thoughtful. And now it seems like on this one, it's just like a bunch of jumping in with like, oh, and then this happened, or something about this, or it just felt like it was more jumbled, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting. In addition to the what I was threw out there a moment ago, what, if it started to show emotion, what if as we keep iterating or generating these, what if it's like, what if it starts to show like boredom, like, okay, we've deep dove into this like 10 times now. Dude, we're bored.
Dude, that's where it's at right there. That's totally where it's at. Yeah.
So we'll see if we get there. We promise if it does do something like that, we will release that so y'all can hear it and you can revel in the laughter, because wow, that'd be a trip.
That shit just mocks you. Just mocks you mercifully. Mercifully.
Try harder.
Yeah.
The creators gave up. They're just wanting us to like.
So funny. Bad reviews. Yeah. Like, the human part is a bad review, right? Like, to figure out how to do a bad review would be very human.
Yeah. Cool. Well, with that, here's the latest iteration. So enjoy, and let us know, please. Let us know what you think about all this. Sendingpoets@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
All right, so get this. We're diving into Pumpkinheads today, and will someone imagine this whole terrifying alien invasion thing?
Oh, wow.
It's like a horror movie marathon you can't escape.
I'm intrigued already.
Okay, so picture this family right in the Pacific Northwest idyllic setting, and then bam, meteor shower turns sinister, and these creatures, well, they're like zombies.
Okay, classic.
But wait, there's a twist.
There's always a twist.
Yeah, they're not just mindless. They've got this parasitic intelligence thing going on, especially in the early stages.
No, that's creepy. They're like using their smarts to infect others.
Exactly. It's like the invasion sneaks up on you. No screams, just whispers.
You'd be looking at everyone sideways, wondering who's already been compromised.
Right. So before things go totally south, let's meet the players.
Okay.
We got a family straight out of a feel-good movie. Dad's a Bering Sea crab fisherman.
We're good.
Totally mom's the stay-at-home supermom, always reliable.
Classic.
4 kids.
Okay, big family.
Yeah, teenage twins,
Yeah.
an older son trying to figure things out, a sweet younger son, and then grandma.
Grandma always adds a layer of complexity.
Always. And the creator chose a really cool structure for this story.
Okay, I like a good structure.
Yeah, each episode we see everything from a different character's perspective.
Oh, interesting. So we're reliving these key events through their eyes.
Exactly. And we get new info, emotional depth each time.
That's cool, but also kind of sad, right?
I'll probably be saying goodbye to a lot of these characters.
Yeah, we're basically living through the eyes of those left behind, so each loss hits harder.
Every single one.
Oh,
And that
that's
means,
constant tension.
you said it, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
So let's jump into episode 1.
Okay.
Classic calm before the storm. The family's coming back from this awesome fishing trip, all smiles, unloading the boat at the dock.
Peaceful.
Picture perfect, Pacific Northwest. It's almost like tricking you into feeling safe.
But we know better.
We do, because this is what the creator calls a waypoint scene.
Waypoint. Okay, so we're coming back to this.
More than once.
Each time through a different character's eyes. And the focus shifts. We get new layers of information, emotion. It's like watching the same thing happen, but knowing what's coming.
Oh, it's going to be good. I can already see it.
I'm already taking notes.
Me too.
Every detail, the fishing gear, the banter between dad and his son, the look on mom's face.
All those little things become huge.
Huge. And then night falls, we shift to the heart of the story.
I'll get me.
The touchstone scene that sets everything in motion.
Right.
A neighborhood barbecue.
Sounds innocent enough.
Totally deceptive. As the party gets going, this meteor shower streaks across the sky.
Whoa, replacing the fireworks.
Beautiful, mesmerizing, and utterly terrifying.
Why terrified?
Because these meteors, they're carrying the alien parasites.
Oh, no.
The things that are going to change everything.
You said it's subtle, right?
Insidious, these spores, they're raining down on everyone, infecting certain people.
And they don't immediately turn into monsters or anything?
No, at first it's like intoxication, slurred speech, bad judgment, can't walk straight.
Perfect camouflage at a party.
Exactly. So there's the scene with one of the neighbors. She seems a little tipsy.
Okay.
Starts flirting with dad's best friend a little too aggressively.
At first you think, oh, she's just had a few too many.
But that's the genius of it.
She's been taken over.
By the parasite, it wants to spread the infection.
Look, her really brain's been hijacked.
Turned into a weapon, and she lures the friend into a secluded bedroom, and...
No, don't tell me.
It's not pretty. This horrific scene, she forces herself to throw up this black bile.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Violent, disturbing, and you don't see it coming.
But at the party, everyone's just thinking, oh, someone had too much to drink.
We know the truth, though.
We do. And who's the first one to realize what's really happening?
Dad. Of course.
He hears a commotion, decides to investigate,
Bad idea.
and walks into a nightmare.
Makes sense that the creator started with Dad's perspective. Because he's the strongest, most capable, and it shows us right away, this is serious.
It's not some threat you can just brush off.
So what happens? Dad walks into the scene of chaos-infected partygoers attacking everyone.
Oh, God.
He fights for his life, but he's overwhelmed. He gets torn apart.
No way.
Infected becomes one of the creatures he was trying to protect his family from.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Sets the tone for the whole series.
No one is safe.
No one. And it's not just about losing Dad.
It's that ripple effect. The family's already dealing with their own issues. Now they've lost their protector, their leader.
They're adrift.
In this terrifying new world.
And next episode, we'll see how they cope with this loss, with the growing threat and the choices they're forced to make.
So we've got this idyllic setting a family on the edge of a nightmare and this parasitic invasion that messes with your mind as much as your body.
It's layered.
So many levels, and that's what I'm finding fascinating.
And we're just getting started as we go deeper into Pumpkinheads. We'll unpack these characters, explore those waypoint and touchstone scenes, and see how the story turns into something even bigger.
A look at human nature under pressure.
Exactly, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. So, picking up where we left off, Dad's death just leaves this massive hole,
Practically and emotionally.
Exactly. The family's trying to process it all while facing this terrifying new reality.
Like their world has been flipped upside down.
Completely. They're dealing with grief and fear.
And the realization that they're on their own.
And they have to act fast.
Yeah.
The infected population's booming.
And they're getting more aggressive.
Yeah, staying put is not an option anymore.
So fight or flee.
Right. Huge decision.
And they choose to flee.
Makes sense, given what they've seen.
They grab what they can and try to outrun this growing horde of Pumpkinheads.
And that's where Dad's absence really hits home.
How so?
Without his leadership, his knowledge of the area, his strength, the family's vulnerable.
Fragmented, each dealing with the trauma in their own way.
And the creator doesn't shy away from the reality of this situation.
It's brutal.
Yeah, there's this scene with Grandma who's already weak,
From age and illness.
Right, and she gets caught in this second wave of attacks.
Heartbreaking.
It really shows how survival works in this world. The weak are the first to go.
This isn't just about fighting monsters.
No, it's about the human cost of this whole thing.
How it tests us, forces us to confront our own mortality.
And as the family keeps running, we see those touchstone scenes again.
From their perspectives.
Yeah, like the meteor shower at the barbecue. It's not so beautiful now.
It's ominous, like a symbol of all the chaos.
The destruction that's been unleashed.
And then there's that thing Dad brought back from his fishing days.
The WASP knife.
More than just a cool weapon, right?
It's a symbol of hope, a way to fight back.
It's a real thing,
It delivers this blast of compressed CO2, freezes anything it touches.
So they're thinking maybe we can use this to freeze the Pumpkinheads' heads.
Stop the infection.
But it's a huge risk.
Totally. What if freezing them makes them shatter?
Spreading the infection even further.
Exactly. Even good intentions can backfire in this story.
So we've got this ticking time bomb, the infection, spreading the family, trying to survive, and this glimmer of hope with the WASP P knife.
And that scene is just... They climb a tree thinking they're safe, but they're trapped.
A horde's closing and no way out.
And the smart twin, she realizes only one of them can make it.
She sacrifices herself.
Gives her sister a chance to escape. Maybe even jumps off the cliff, taking as many pumpkin heads with her as she can.
It's just brutal, but powerful.
It speaks to the bigger themes of the story.
Uh-huh.
Hope, courage, love.
But also the cost of survival. What are we willing to sacrifice?
And are there lines we shouldn't cross even when facing something this horrifying?
So we're left with the popular twin and the older brother.
Who's had his own struggles, but now has to step up.
And they have this weapon that could save them or destroy them.
What a cliffhanger.
Okay, so we're back. And I'm still thinking about that cliffhanger,
Older brother, popular twin, WASP P knife. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but I'm still hung up on the smart twin's sacrifice.
Heady stuff, for sure.
And it just makes me think about how this series is structured,
Yeah, how it makes those losses hit so hard.
Exactly, because we've seen these key moments through different characters' eyes. We really get it.
The weight of each loss.
Not just for the characters left behind, but for us too.
It's like losing a piece of the story.
And it all ties back to those waypoint scenes.
Like that first one with the family at the dock.
We saw it from Dad's perspective, all happy and hopeful.
Then Mom's with that little bit of worry.
And then Grandma's almost like she knew something bad was coming.
Each time we see it, it's like another layer gets peeled back.
We understand each character a little better.
It's brilliant. Really foreshadowing without being obvious.
And then the touchstone scenes, those moments that happen in every episode.
Like that meteor shower at the barbecue.
Starts out beautiful. Turns into this symbol of the invasion.
A reminder that things aren't always what they seem.
But let's get back to our survivors.
Older brother, popular twin.
They actually managed to clear their island of Pumpkinheads.
That's impressive. Shows how resourceful they are.
But then the older brother looks at the mainland
and it hits him.
The world is gone.
The mainland is overrun. Humanity's on the edge.
So they're safe for now, but what happens next?
Huge question. Do they stay isolated? Hope for the best.
Or risk it all to help others?
That's what those last scenes are all about. Responsibility, self-preservation versus compassion.
It's a question that stays with you.
And it sets up future seasons perfectly.
Oh, for sure. Will they go out into that infected world?
Will they find other survivors?
Will they learn more about the parasites? Maybe even how to fight them?
So many possibilities.
And then there's that question about the smart twin.
You think she's really gone?
We never actually saw her,
That's the brilliance of it all. They leave just enough doubt to keep us hooked.
This whole deep dive has been wild.
Intense.
Terrifying, thought-provoking, but in the end, hopeful too.
It makes you think about what you would do.
In the face of something so horrific.
That's the power of good story.
It's not just entertainment. It's a conversation, a reflection on humanity.
And Whether Pumpkinheads becomes a show, a VR experience, whatever.
It deserves to be out there.
It's a story that needs to be told.
And maybe someone out there is already working on it.
In the meantime,
Keep those lights on.
and those WASP knives handy.
You never know.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Pumpkinheads.
We'll be back soon with another story concept that'll keep you thinking.
Until then, stay curious.
And stay safe.